In this video, we're going to demonstrate how to replace the Human Touch sauna massage mechanism. The first thing we're going to do is use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 4 screws that secure the backrest cover. Once the screws are removed, you can kind of pry it off and remove it from the chair. Next, we'll use the remote control to raise the calf massager up as high as it will go. Next, we're going to power off the chair, then unplug it. Next, we're going to use a 4mm Allen wrench to remove this bolt, which you can see is already partially removed. We've already started this process. And then, depending on the serial number of your chair, there'll be another bolt up in the hole in the frame right up here. So check up there if the side panel isn't easily coming off after removing this bolt. So either 1 or 2 bolts here on each side. If you want better visual access here, you may also choose to lift the calf massager up further and prop it up on a box or something. Once we've removed the bolts from the front on both sides, we're going to move up to the upper rear brackets, which are hidden in a little pocket. So we need to find that pocket right underneath the shoulder airbags, unzip the pocket, and use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove those 2 screws. And each of those screws has a washer as well, so be sure not to drop the washer or screw down into the chair. Next, we need to remove the 2 lower rear screws that secure the side panel on each side. Depending on the serial number of your chair, these screws may or may not have washers. The next step is to remove the side panels. However, we're not going to disconnect the air hoses. We simply need to detach them and set them alongside of the chair to enable us to remove this upper backrest. So just set the side panels like so on each side. Next, we need to prepare to remove this upper backrest assembly. And to do so, we need to disconnect the speaker cables and air hose on each side. And we do that right over on the side here. There's a speaker cable, and then there's an air hose connector right next to the speaker cable. That's where we're going to disconnect the hose. Okay, that hose is a bit difficult to get off of that fitting, but it does come off. Once we get that free, we can do the same thing on the other side. That one came off easier. So once both speaker cables and both hoses are disconnected, we can unzip the zipper at the top of the backrest. And we're ready to lift the upper backrest assembly off the chair. Now we're ready to start the process of removing the massage mechanism. First thing we're going to do is use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 2 screws that secure the hard plastic frame to the metal frame. And then we can remove the 2 screws on either end of the top of the metal frame so that we can remove the upper part. We will be ultimately moving the mechanism up and out the top of this metal frame. We can remove that frame piece. And make sure to keep the screws with the parts that they secure so that we don't mix the screws up during reassembly. Next, we need to remove 2 more screws along the side of that plastic frame, 2 on each side, because we're going to need to push that plastic frame forward to allow the massage rollers to clear when we get to that point. Same 2 on the other side. The next thing we're going to do is push the plastic backrest frame forward to expose this strap here. And we need to remove 2 screws here and then that secure this plastic piece right here in order to free this strap from the massage mechanism frame. So you'll need a little bit shorter of a screwdriver to do this. Next, we'll use a wire cutter to cut the 4 zip ties that secure the massage mechanism connectors and cabling here. Careful not to cut the cable harness. Okay. So next we're going to cut the zip ties that secure each of these 3 connectors and disconnect the connectors. Okay, and then we have one more harness here that connects up to the board up here. So we have one more zip tie to cut that secures that harness. And then we'll use a flathead screwdriver and insert it between that connector and the motor to release the locking tab that secures that connector. Sort of pry that connector to release it so we can disconnect that connector. And there's some hot glue there. It might be kind of stuck to the neighboring connector. And in this case, I pulled the next door connector out, so just plug it back in there. And the last step to free the mechanism from the cabling then is to use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the ground wire that connects the mechanism to the frame. And now we're ready to move the mechanism up and out of the frame. Now obviously the mechanism could be in a variety of different locations. So in order to move it, what we'll do is manually manipulate this rolling motor here by inserting a flathead screwdriver into the top of the mechanism and turning it clockwise. This will go faster if you have a power drill with a flathead screwdriver drill bit. You need to hold that plastic backrest frame out of the way so the wheels don't hit. So when the rollers get to this position, and basically the lower rollers have passed up into this part of the frame, at this point we can simply grasp the mechanism by the frame and lift it up and out of the chair frame. To install the new mech then, we can first check to make sure the new mech has a roller in each of the 4 positions, and then just align the 2 front rollers with the track, push forward on the plastic backrest frame and slide it onto the track until all 4 rollers are on the track. Like so. And then once again we'll use the flathead screwdriver counterclockwise this time to move the mechanism downward and we need to move the mechanism downward until this plastic piece here is beneath this sensor here. Once that position is like that, then we can continue with our installation procedure. Now we're ready to begin reconnecting the connectors. We'll start with the one that connects to the board up top, which comes from the bigger, larger black harness. Make sure that connector is fully seated there. And we'll come back and zip tie that later. Next we're going to connect, so starting with the left, with the kneading motor, we're going to connect to the blue connector. And then moving into the center percussion motor, we're going to connect to the red connector. and the motor on the right, the rolling motor, to the black connector. Okay. Next we'll reinstall the ground screw to secure the ground wire to the chair frame. Next, we're going to secure the two sides of each connector together using new zip ties. Next, we're ready to start arranging these connectors as they were before. The primary idea here is that we want the harness inserted into the metal guides here, and the cables and connectors bunched neatly together such that we can zip tie them to make absolutely sure that they remain secure. So once you have them arranged more or less like they were in the first place, we're going to wrap 3 zip ties from left to right on the connector part, and then another one to the right a little bit further to secure the harness. As you can see, there's no way those connectors are going anywhere. Okay, and then lastly, we need to resecure the cabling to the motor as it was previously. Simply wrap a zip tie around the motor and around all the cables that are in front of it to keep those cables snug to the motor there. Okay, then we can use a wire cutter to cut all the excess zip tie. Next, we need to reinstall the guide that secures that strap. So we again need to push the plastic backrest forward and install that plastic guide over the strap and replace the 2 screws to secure it. And while doing this, be sure not to bend this plastic part of the frame out any further than you need to work. There is a point beyond which you can bend it such that you bend the lower part of the frame and cause damage. So, next we'll install the top metal frame piece. You can just place that into position with the 2 screw holes that secure to the plastic part of the backrest facing upward. And we'll replace the 2 screws on each side. Next, we're ready to replace the 2 screws that secure the plastic frame to the metal frame. These 2 screws have washers. and then the 2 screws on each side that secure the plastic frame to the metal frame. Next, we're ready to install the upper backrest. And this part is a bit tricky. And there are 2 different versions, depending on the serial number of your chair. The first version has 4 brackets, 2 on each side, that look like this. And they go onto 2 posts that look like this. So the idea is that you slide the upper backrest assembly onto the 4 posts. However, it's nearly impossible to do that all at the same time. So what we do is hold the backrest assembly in alignment as much as possible, but slide one side very slightly on ahead of the other one, just so that you can kind of gauge and make sure both sides are on, and then finish sliding the other side on. But it will take some adjustment in order to get this on right. It is a tricky part. The second version has different shaped brackets, which makes this process much easier. Like so. Next, we can close the zipper that attaches the backrest pad to the upper backrest assembly. Okay, now we're ready to reinstall the side panels. You can't see these when you're installing them, but just so you know, just like the upper backrest assembly, we have this bracket and a post again. But since you can't really visually see that, what we're going to do instead is position the side panel, aligning it visually a couple inches, so there's just a couple inches here, and aligning this bracket with the pocket that it goes into, and then pushing the side panel against the side of the chair, sliding it backward, and by doing so then you'll ensure that the bracket slides over the post. And then to make sure it is, you just kind of pull a little bit outward, and then you'll know that's secure. And we can go ahead and secure it by replacing the 2 Phillips head screws. Be sure those screws each have a washer before installing them. As you can see, if the screw holes aren't quite aligned, you might need to jostle the side panel very slightly to get the screw holes in better alignment, or perhaps push in on it. There we go. You can close the zipper on that little pocket, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. One thing I should have mentioned earlier, when installing the left-hand side panel, make sure this USB charger is up here where the customer can reach it. Next, we're ready to install the 4mm Allen screw, or screws, depending on your chair, to secure the front of the side panel. Now we're ready to replace the 2 lower rear side panel screws. Depending on the serial number of your chair, these screws may or may not have had washers. Now we're ready to reconnect the speaker connectors and the air hoses, one on each side. Make sure that hose is installed all the way onto the fitting. Now we're ready to install the backrest cover. Note these tabs at the bottom of the backrest cover and the corresponding slots. Make sure that tabs go into those slots and then lift the top of the backrest cover into position. And replace the 4 screws. And finally, we can plug in the chair, power it on, and confirm that the massage mech is working properly.